What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
Chille here.
Meoni here.
And today we're doing a special episode of Community Feedback, breaking down your comments, going over the media event and everything like that. We've invited Chille and we invited Meoni here because it's a part of the community. And I think they all have some really interesting perspectives, especially because obviously EU did not do an influencer perspective and it was only kind of like the magazines, the websites that they brought in. And so we want to just have this conversation with you guys as well as with Meoni and with Chille here. So thank you, Meoni. Thank you, Chille, for joining us for this special episode of Community Feedback. You guys have any, before we dive into the comments, do you guys have any thoughts that you want to share? I'm going to start with Meoni first. You didn't get invited because you're an influencer and not a website, but Chille's website had, somebody from his team got to go, but he didn't get to go specifically. But after everything that's come out now, what's your reading on Shadowbringers?
Oh, it looks absolutely incredible. I think a lot of people didn't expect a lot of the changes, a lot of stuff, especially when we look at the two new jobs, specifically like Dancer and Gunbreaker. A lot of people were quite surprised at how they play. I think, everyone's hyped to play Dancer at this point. There's Dancer fever everywhere, not blue fever, it's Dancer fever. And overall, it looks really exciting. Not being able to play it firsthand, I have a million questions for you guys. But it's there's very little for me to say in only one sentence. So yeah, it's.
So your read is obviously very positive because there's been people in the community that are just just trashing it for the changes in the battle system. Well, and that's expected. The hope is just wait, guys, just wait. It's going to be fine. Chille, what's your take? You had somebody that you work with get a go and have hands on, and now you've seen all kind of the footage as well. So what's your take, Chille?
Oh, now I'm really excited about the trust system. I like the idea of it, and now I've seen it actually working. It really does look like it's just an evolved version of the Squadron Dungeons.
You guys
which is amazing.
You guys have touched on a lot of what some of these comments kind of detail. So, Chris, why don't you jump us into our first comment and we can get this party rolling.
All right, first one's from Zaveris here. Make sure I have the right one. Would have been nice if they'd retained or conserved Fluid Aura original ability to interrupt enemy actions, which the knockback did. As is, Fluid Aura seems kind of useless. Unfortunate. Giving Holy some range rather than having it remain a point blank could have been a very nice way to give some quality of life and compensate for the gap left by the devs removing Arrow 3.
Right, so that's in relation to White Mage and the White Mage changes from a video I posted the other day. Mm-hmm. Specifically, they're talking in reference, if people don't know about that, Fluid Aura for the longest time has had a knockback associated with that. Mm-hmm. And with Shadowbringers, they tried to cut off a lot of those sorts of abilities by the looks of it. And so now it's just been turned into a bind, even though bind in general seems to have been cut down specifically when you look at things like Tri-bind, for example, with other classes.
Oh, no, so, not Tri-bind.
Is it not Tri-bind?
No, Tri-bind is done. It's now Outburst or something like that nature. So it's still visually something like that. But yeah, there's some... That's definitely an adjustment kind of to play out. Honestly, I think for me, Fluid Aura just lost its interest when they took out its ability to damage. But they did that because it was a part of a rotation if you're trying to maximize your DPS. And you just see that monster's flying over there. And now not having that knockback ability. I'm wondering if we'll have that still within PvP. Chille, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting because Fluid Aura is really good for PvP because of the fact that it does a knockback. Mm-hmm. If you're on the side of the cliff or you're doing the defend mission, Siege, I think it's called, where it's the middle area with the times you could knock the other players off the side. I don't know if it will keep its knockback. I think they will just make it a bind because bind will still be useful in PvP more than PvE content anyway, at least.
Mm-hmm. Meoni, what's your hot take on this though? Because you obviously covered it in the video, but for those who haven't seen it yet, how does this make you feel? Because I've always it always was a kind of weird thing because it's fun to see, but it was always kind of annoying. Ultimately, when it can do damage.
Yeah, I actually agree with the annoying aspect because I remember back in when I used to play World of Warcraft, which is something we can all relate to, with Boomkins and the knockback. So specifically, I think that cutting that away was probably a good thing, because the last thing you want is stuff to be knocked out of, an AoE on the floor, and that was always the biggest problem in World of Warcraft. So,
Chris, what are your thoughts?
So in World of Warcraft specifically, there's a big difference between an interrupt and a knockback. So a knockback simply stops their cast bar, as opposed to a true interrupt, where you think of it like a counter spell in like Magic the card game. Like, it actually stops the cast and it keeps them from doing it again. So it gives them like a lockout period. And so with the changes that they've talked about, where tanks and ranged are going to have this kind of silence, which in the content that they chose for the media tour, they didn't do a good job of really showing us anything where that was required. Nothing in the dungeon we ran was like, if you don't silence this, your group will wipe, or it'll take out half your life, or anything like that. That dungeon was very forgiving. And so as of now, like, I really want to, before I pass judgment on like getting rid of knockbacks or getting rid of anything like that, I want to understand, are they just trying to knock it down to one mechanic and then really drill that mechanic on this expansion? If so, they need to show us that. Ideally, as soon as E3, when we get to see people play what looks like it'll be the first trial fight.
Yeah, because the dungeon you guys got to play was what, level 73, 74?
Yeah, the 73 dungeon. It was, I think it was gorgeous. Go ahead, Chille.
I'm going to guess that's the second dungeon, because 73 seems like
1, 3, 5, 9.
They said 9 are coming. They said we were getting 9 dungeons in Shadowbringers. So
I think that's probably going to be like the first main dungeon or the first optional dungeon, because remember, there's always like one optional dungeon early on.
Yeah, last time what that happened, so for those of you who don't remember Stormblood or what happened with that, is that they played through the optional dungeon, the first one that you had to kind of go on a side quest to unlock to go ahead and play, and that was also level 73 as well. So I think like building off of just the fluid aura, I want to kind of get y'all's read on with the healing changes. Like, I honestly don't see them as healing changes. I just see them as, yeah, that's what healers are. They're here to heal. And if you have some damaging abilities, that is what it is. But I know a lot of people are concerned with the idea of being bored. Like, I'm going to start with Chille. Like, with the healing changes all together, more than just fluid aura here, like, what's your hot read there?
They are really bad, some of them, at least from what I can see. It looks like white mages will be able to out DPS their own burst with the outdo the blood lily with its own glare attack. You'll be able to do more damage by spamming glare in the window before you get your blood lily. It counts as the same amount of potency. So yeah, I feel like the damage for the healers, or at least, are a bit low. But people are really just overreacting too much. I mean, yeah, it might come out like how we got it right now. Let's say it stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
We've got future patches. We've got 5.1. We've got 5.2. We've got 5.3. Developers pay attention to what the community wants. So if the community
does the community want 4 DPSs? Is that what we all want? Like, I'm just curious.
I just feel like it's for like Windows where there's not that much healing. And of course, they want to see the biggest numbers they can pull.
Who doesn't? Meoni, what are your thoughts?
I'd agree. For the most part, I think a healer's role is a lot different than perhaps would have been envisioned at the start of this game, at the start of all of this journey back in 1.0. I think it's taken on the point where you really, need to focus on DPS to keep people entertained, and some people aren't perhaps too happy about the perhaps homogenization, let's call it, of some of the abilities and taking out some of the techniques. Like Fluid Aura, it may be annoying, it may have its uses here and there, but it was just another button you could use. Does anyone know if Repose is still?
Yeah, Repose is there as a part of the cross roll.
So you've still got some bits and pieces.
Yeah, so you have Sleep and Bind. You don't have your knockback.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as it is. I would like to see more numbers, honestly. Because when I'm in a dungeon and there's nothing to do, when you outgear it, it's just, even with the level sync system, you get to the point where, you're resorting to have to pull DPS numbers. And, you can just rely on Tetra for the tank for the most part. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait for this guy to get low and spam stone, but it'll be glare this time around, won't it? And deer.
So you bring up an interesting point though, because it's like obviously like that's what we're kind of used to in Stormblood. The question is that is the content going to be adjusted to match what these jobs play as? Chris, what are your thoughts? Because you played as a healer.
So you guys have touched on a lot here. One of my concerns is that like the DPS really. So when I was trying to DPS as my white mage, mana became a real issue real quick. And when you outgear things later, you're DPSing more and more. But you would counter that by having a larger and larger MP pool. But you're not going to be having a larger and larger. You're going to be operating on the same fixed MP pool for the entire duration of the expansion. All you're going to be doing is increasing your regen rate, and that's not really the same. So how that functions is going to be up to them. So I want to see them require more healing. I will say that at the media tour, they gave us a 90-minute presentation, and then they said, go to your computers and play. And so we didn't get the second half of that live letter like you guys did, where he showed the rotations and stuff like that. It basically was 90 minutes. And in that 90 minutes, when he got to the pure healer section, he basically said, like, we want healers to have to heal. And then in the North America one, he focused on that phrase, pure healing. And while those are the same sentence, pure healing makes it sound like there's no DPS. That's a big difference in the phrase, like focus on healing or however he said it. So I don't remember feeling like in the media tour that healers were being attacked for wanting to do DPS. And yet like people are outraged right now about this. I would say chill out. Let's see what the content looks like, because that's going to give us a lot more context than any of the skill changes.
Also, from the videos I've watched, the trusts seem to take a lot of damage, and we all know that the trusts take less damage than actual players, which means that the actual numbers taken by party members will be increased by a lot compared to what we're used to in dungeons.
I healed the trust. Like when I went hands on with white mage, I took them through the trust, the dungeon, and we got it clear. But I was doing a lot of healing. But there was also like I had the footage where I'm doing plenty of damage too. So it didn't end up being something where like I felt like, yeah, there's downtime, and I didn't feel like I was constrained on MP, but maybe that's just my natural kind of trying to keep things balanced, I kept a lot of hots up. I kept a lot of hots up, and that kind of leads into the tanking thing. Like I never felt like I was ripping hate or anything of that nature. That it's like, nope, we'll have to wait and see, because we only got a small slice of it. But I do want to say thanks, Zelberis, for the comment. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that conversation? Go ahead, Chris.
So I wonder what y'all's thoughts are. So I wonder if this whole debate comes out of their aversion to parsers. And what I mean by that is they don't want us to have hard numbers. And so we have to set our own definitions for what things are supposed to be. Yeah. If instead at the end of the dungeon, you got like a PvP style scoreboard, and tanks could have their scoreboard could be how much damage did you let your fellow party members take? And healers could be how much overhealing did you do? What percentage of time was the people in your party at 80% or more health? And so if you gave that scoreboard at the end and people got an A+, just like the commendation system, just a nudge. The commendation system doesn't make you be polite, but it is a reminder that there's a reward if you are. And so if you got that A+, which maybe gave you, I don't know, nothing. It could give you nothing. It could give you an achievement that doesn't even give a title. And yet I think people would say, okay, this is their chance to kind of subtly nudge you and say, you notice that the healer scoreboard doesn't have DPS on it? Okay. And I don't know, do you guys think that there's something that they could be doing to better communicate what their intent is with the content?
I agree, but I would like to hear what Chille and Meoni think.
Want to go first, Meoni?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to parsing, they've always been averse to it. Like they've never been like happy that people are doing it, but they're a bit indifferent because they know that people want to see those sorts of numbers. But it doesn't seem to be much on the side of incentivizing that because of their focus on trying to keep things, dare I say, more casual, but not quite more casual. It's like supposed to be more be going in there and going, oh well, you're terrible at Bard because you didn't pull over 2k DPS. They don't want that sort of thing, which is why their policy is the way it is. I don't think we'll ever see them change their standpoint on that. But I think that they should have some kind of incentivized system to do your best, like you've said. I just don't know what that could be.
Even if it's just a personal score, and only you can see it.
The personal score, I think, is the right way forward. That's why Julie doesn't really play. It stresses her out because she wants to make sure that she's improving or that she's contributing. And the fact that the game doesn't let her have that information, and the fact that she also knows that people already do have that information, there is a delta here. You know, we can say, you know, they can say don't talk about it in game, but it's that there is the delta. Their stance on it is, I think, essentially unfair. It is unfair to set like a half of the population that plays the game, and so the half has to rely on the other half. And it's like I think there are solutions when it comes down to it, because I don't want anything real time. I don't care real time how I'm doing. I always kind of like what's the report afterwards? How did I do? And then if it compares me to me, then it allows me to say, am I getting better? Am I getting worse? Like, and then from a score perspective, like if I'm like, man, I'm a B mage, like a BY mage, like, like what could I be doing differently in that regards? And you know, like it has to be handled with caution, because you don't want to be sitting here and then just introduce like more toxicity. But I think that exists. I think denying that, you know, somebody's not parsing you, and yeah, they might not say it, but that's where they just drop the content on the first wipe. That's where they're like, yeah, we're not going to do it. No one's bringing up their DPS. I'm out. I'm not wasting my time. It'll be faster for me to take the penalty than it will be to tell people they're doing it wrong and then risk getting banned. You know, it's like, I think that the system has to evolve, because people, you know, they ask for like some kind of Hall of the Veteran, some kind of more optional content. It's like, it's a game. Okay, let's just make it a game. Let's.
But if it's done right, it's not too bad. Like, I'll admit, my static group passes. We'll pass each other, and we'll see how we do each week to see how we've improved or how we've got worse. Then we'll look at where we can change our rotations, tweak things, and do better. Mm-hmm. It's really helped me grow as a monk. Actually, I've gone from like really, really bad DPS to only slightly bad DPS.
It's all about self-improvement.
Well, you were also playing a monk, so it's like.
And I'm playing on NA ping, so.
Yeah, new monk could be a huge asset. All right, Chris, do you want to take us into our second comment?
Yeah, so I'm going to change it up here. So talking about content that we see them marking improvement from. Purgatory Sakara says, it's scary when Yoshida says things like Baldesian Arsenal and Blue Mage were successful. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with me.
Yeah, let's start with Meoni.
Well, was Blue Mage successful? That's the question you have to ask yourselves.
I answer it yes. I know, and I get so many people like, how could you go against the community? Everybody thinks it sucks. I was like, well, I don't.
Blue Mage to me was successful for a week, in that I enjoyed it rigorously. I enjoyed the Masked Carnival to the point where I actually did that, and I was like, okay, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. What can I do with this? Can I interact with other players? Yeah, you can interact with the Blue Mages and go do old dungeons.
Yeah.
Right. So in many ways, it's a double-edged sword. If all you want to do is that particular content, then it's perfect. If you want to go and see big numbers, but then again, you don't really get that impression when you play Blue Mage. You have like some cool stuff like self-detonation and things like that, and you know, the wasp attacks, what's it called, final sting,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But there's no like massive numbers on screen that we were led to believe originally. I think that's got to be developed on a little bit. It's got to really come out of its shell, and they need to put something together to really tailor for Blue Mage and the other limited jobs. If they carry on with this system, I would like to see limited job only PvP personally, like arena style stuff. But that's, you know, going to have its own problems because someone's just going to insta-kill you with something, right? I don't know how you even balance these. They don't want to balance them, but how do you create content for them?
Chille.
I feel like, well, there was rumors that Blue Mage was delayed originally, that the original release was 4.4.
That's when it should have been, yeah.
And then it was delayed to 4.5 due to tweaks and not finished or whatever. Which means that if it had come out like planned, like 4.4 and then 4.5 to 60, I feel like Blue Mage wouldn't be as dead in the content, because there's a lot more content at 60 than you do at 50 because of all the extra dungeons, the trials, the raids. You'd still get your content drowned, but I feel like it wouldn't be as dead in the water as it right now, especially as we're probably going to have to wait till 5.1.
Now, like what was interesting because we got to sit down with Yoshi P and ask specifically kind of about why certain things aren't the way they are. Like they've done it like so. Fate change in Shadowbringers, phenomenal. That's not going to trickle into Stormblood. That's not going to trickle into Heaven's Word. It's not going to trickle into AOR. And a lot of that, and I said in the interview, it's really the ghost of 1.0. Like there's a lot they ended up having to do. The issue with Blue Mage was that it ran out of content. It like there's like as a job that has like that thrives in the open world. Once you hit cap, there was no reason to keep leveling. And so we talked about that with the Paragon levels. Like we talked like if there was some reason to be out there, people will go like it doesn't have to appeal to everybody. I don't think everything that the game introduces needs to appeal to like I either 100% like everything they do or I'm out. Like no, like it's like they can do fun things, and I think Blue Mage is an introduction. I think the weakness of it shows actually the weakness of what we've already been saying all along. Like, well, if I could keep quote unquote leveling, like some kind of Paragon or some kind of glamour level, that in and of itself makes Blue Mage inherently interesting. You could still go out and be like, this is what we're doing because there's a reason behind it. Chris proposed the idea of like learning a skill. Like imagine if you learn it 5 times, 500 times, 1,000 times, if that lets you glamour the look of that skill itself so that there's a reason to go out and keep farming. So where Blue Mage has me really excited is that when all of a sudden you can start taking it into and running the content. The fate change really is a good change. It's one of the things that I've advocated. Why are you running fates? Because I did more fates out there in the short time we had than I ran all of Stormblood. It's like, because of once like seriously, I think I've run maybe 2 fates in Stormblood. Just like there's no reason. I have no need for the XP. It drops nothing for me. I'm out. But in Stormblood and Shadowbringers, that completely changed. Chris and I farmed fates and unlocked and shopped at the vendors, and it was gorgeous. And they said they're going to keep adding stuff to that, so there's always going to be something to go out and acquire. Blue Mage as a concept isn't yet unfinished, and my only issue with it is that even at the end of the expansion, if they won't let it into the content. I think it's always like when everything's been beaten, can you go and try to do it crazily with Blue Mage? But that's just my take. Chris.
So I don't understand why they won't let it go to cap. If you want to lock it out of content, then lock it out just like they do Tombstone locks. Say it can't be in content from the current patch. So if we're in 5.2, it can only go up to 5.1. That way it's never part of world first clears. It's never part of siphoning people off of, well, there's not enough people in the trial roulette for the current trial. There's not enough people pugging it because they're all in Party Finder with their Blue Mages. It's like, no, it's always for old content, or even to get 2 behind. We're in 5.2, it can clear 5.0. And it's just, I want to defend them because people are like, I don't like Blue Mage. It's like, well, you haven't seen the whole thing. We went to a restaurant, they brought out the appetizers. You said, I don't like this appetizer. You've already ordered your meal, just be patient. But now at this point, we've been at that restaurant for an hour and you're still upset, and like I'm not really able to defend them anymore. I'm like, no, they should have at least told us that the food was running late and when we can expect it and why it's late, and and the fact that we already know we're not going to get to stay for dessert is just frustrating. I'm really excited for what the Blue Mage system could be. I just am worried that they won't get there. And like Brian said, I want there to be a reason. The problem with Blue Mage was that it was so fast, and people are like, well, you guys played it too fast. That can't be the problem. It can't be that oh, well, these players played the game and they're wrong. Like that can't be the issue. There has to be a core change there. And so if you had said unlock a skill 50 times and it has a different appearance, there would still be people running those trials because getting those skills to drop 50 times would be a huge feat. So let me spit a Namatsu. Let me spit, whatever. Like let me spit Shiva. If I'm willing to go farm sardines 50 million times, then let me spit Shiva. Like it doesn't matter. It's a cosmetic class. So it just feels like a really cool idea that I'm worried they won't support to. But if Valdesian Arsenal, the other side of this content, actually makes me regret not keeping up with Eureka. So I don't know about you guys, but I forced myself to keep up with Eureka all the way up through about 2/3 of the way through, and then I just gave up. And so I never even made it into High Dados. And so for people to be doing Baldur's Gate Arsenal, I've just been like watching MPQ streams, like, I want to do this. I want to be in 56-man PvE content. It's nuts. What do you guys think of that? Is that content you want to see more of? Because in our interview, he said that they were absolutely interested in doing more large-scale PvE content.
Problem personally with Baldessian Arsenal is the ability to gain access to it via having to use third-party tools such as Discords to actually gain access into those groups, to actually determine you're actually going to go in there and defeat it. There is a lot of coordination needed with those sorts of groups. If you go in there and steal someone's portal, they report you, etc. Toxicity. The biggest problem when it came out was just purely that. It's just so ridiculous to me that they would put a system in that didn't allow for the people who have spent the longest time in there to actually take part in it. You get people that are just like, oh yeah, this is our server now, and they just spawn in with their full group, and then they go in there and you're like, oh, okay. There's no sense of general vicinity sort of community action. It's like, you have to be in this pre-form group or you're not going to get a chance. And they're like, oh, but here's the link to the Discord. It's like, no, this is not the answer. Why is this the way it is? If it's going to be this amazing, like, sprawling dungeon with large-scale PvE players, and it's supposed to be publicly accessible, why isn't it publicly accessible? Why is there not a queuing feature within Eureka? Why is there simply not you can use the duty finder inside Eureka? Why can you not create a group in there? Why do you need to resort?
I'm gonna jump in on this. I do want to get Chille's opinion, but Eureka is content that has run up against technical issues. It was delayed because of that. I think those technical issues have been solved. I think a lot of people like misunderstood or misunderstand where I come from as an engineer, and when I talk about these kind of things, and they're like, you're hating on the game. I'm like, not at all. Like, what they do and the passion they put into it is incredible, but they have really struggled in Stormblood technologically. And I think a lot of the work, and why Stormblood doesn't necessarily, I think, resonate as people's strongest expansion. There are exceptions, people who think it's the best. I'm happy for them. I'm jealous in a way. But I think that a lot of the work that's been being done is actually being something that we don't see yet. And the way I think that it's justified, and what at least to me tells me that I'm right, is the world visit system. Eureka, and if you take the concept of the world visit, you take the concept of the diadem, if the next iteration basically puts that system in on its own server that can operate under its own rules, where you can have a duty finder, where you can have party finder, where you can have the tools that Eureka needed on day one and never was able to get. Holy freaking heck, dude. Like, that is content that I want. Like, I was sitting here saying, let me know when this is here. The reason it never came is it couldn't. They have to do so much. Like, the reason why the fates aren't, it's not trickling down, is there is so much more work that's involved. Because back in the day, and this is like, it's a good and a bad thing, they never knew a Heaven's Word would ever exist. They were just trying to survive. ARR was it. It was risky. It was a Hail Mary, and they hit it, and it was beautiful. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, so they've been building, but some of the stuff they have to do, it just is like, it's not going to make it. Just from a development time perspective, Yoshi's like, yeah, they want to. Don't lose hope. There's just a lot of moving parts that end up coming involved. So my biggest hope is that for the next iteration, they literally are just like, hey, world visit works. You quote unquote world visit into this special, whatever they do, and then everybody's on it. It's not expiring, and all of your open world tools are available. But Chille.
Now about BA, yeah, the Discord thing is an issue, and yes, it is a pain when they jump in and say, oh, this is ours, but it's not as easy. I've done a couple of BA groups in the past. I've never cleared BA, but I've got just AV, so I'm happy with the fact that I've got to experience it. Even just getting into BA with a pre-made group is the biggest pain in the world.
And getting the same server.
Yeah, it would take about 2 to 3 hours of just going in, going out, going in, going out, going in, and hoping you get in the right server with everyone else that's pre-made.
Right.
That's one of the things if they do more BA stuff, they need to make it way so at least alliances can queue into the it together, if not the whole group.
Yeah, the issue is a technical issue. It's all, I mean, it's not in the content, it's in the execution. And it's not that, I would say it's not that they're not aware of it. I think it's just that here's what we're doing. So it's not like, hey, we didn't get anything.
Yeah.
But like, you know.
Eureka's amazing, right? I mean, I loved Eureka. I'm one of the few people that farmed like 4 weapons through it till completion, and I'm still in there now, like when I'm not doing videos. I love it. It's just a great way to meet people. I love the social aspect of it. I just think that Baldesi and Arsenal should have been separated. Like, hey, look, you've completed the storyline, you've unlocked this dungeon, it's now accessible on the duty finder. You leave the group, they allow for alliance queuing, and it's separated, so there's no like Eureka's down because of Baldesi and Arsenal thing. You separate the instances like they usually would. Instead, they tried to put it inside, which is obviously going to create more technical issues for themselves. In the future, personally, I would love it to be like streamlined and work perfectly, but they have to work on that party creation system in the game.
Yeah, hands down. I still think that the next solution will actually involve the world visit, because all of that is created, but it's not created as a part of the instance system that Eureka had to exist in so that people would be matched together. Chris.
And just at a technical level, we don't even have to know it's the instance thing, right? So Eureka, you talk to an NPC and then you are taken into Eureka. You don't care if Eureka is being hosted on an instance server or if it's being hosted, like you don't care. All you know is that you get a load screen and now you're in Eureka. And so the world visit system just gives them something on the back end. It doesn't matter how it works, just that it works. So I think that, and maybe I'm just misreading what his facial expression said, but we asked about harder 4-man content in our interview, and Yoshi P pivoted and said, because Baldi and Arsenal was such a success, that's what we prefer to focus on. And he looked, at least from my perspective of his, it looked like his facial expression looked like he was genuinely surprised with how engaged people were with BA. That they just kind of put it at the end of this Eureka content, like, well, here's something. And then we were all like, yes, more of that. So maybe some of the pitfalls were that, like, Square Enix has done this a lot, where they build it and then they're shocked that we come. Like, there's that, they just haven't heard that whole saying. So
Yoshi
like,
P thought Stormblood was going to be we've already hit the apex.
Yeah, he thought, oh yeah, it's slowed down now.
So I tend to get like a little bit frustrated with how many times they've said, like, so I sent out mailers to all of Texas that I'm having free barbecue on Friday, and like people showed up. Yeah, like, it's not.
Wait, free barbecue.
I appreciate that your head hasn't like swollen to where you can't get in and out of doors because of how good the content's been, but like some small part of you has to respect the fact that 2019, it is very likely that looking back on 2019 from 2020, that Final Fantasy will be, by most definitions, the best MMO of this year. And so you have to know that that's going to come with an audience, and that's going to come with an audience of people who are already fans. That's going to come with an audience of people who are new fans. That's going to come with an audience of people who are only fans during 2019, and then we'll just catch the next thing in 2020 if it's not 14. And so it's really frustrating to see them come out with content and then gate it behind not anticipating people caring. I don't know if that's a fair judgment, but that's how I feel about it.
It's the question of humility, right? Though, because it's that I don't want to sit like, do you set, like, if we set our expectations to impossible levels and then nobody shows up, like, are we feeling horrible, or are they sitting here saying, like, we think this is going to be fun, and people actually thought it was fun, oh, that's good, rather than like, oh, people are going to love this, and it's like, crickets are playing, and you're like, well, I'm glad we invested a lot of time into it. The other side of this, which is really like thrilling, and from a development perspective, for those of you who might be new in the community or don't understand it, is that they've already got all of Shadowbringers planned out over the course of 2 years. Some things can, might come sooner or later, because that's just how it works. Like, oh, we need to do this next. But they're actually in August going to be starting out the planning for 6.0. you know, and so that's going to be even more exciting to the fact that it's like, you know, when it comes down to it, like they're looking, they have their plan, and that's why we get content as consistent as we do. So I think it's about, you know, when you go to a buffet, like when you think about it, you're like, oh, we have a lot of different options for you. What mood are you in for? And the fact that we have 72-man PvE content is good. We have it in the PvP side, but I think that, you know, it's really all about it's not about what they are offering for us to consume. It's about how easy they make it for us to get in and be able to like group up and things like that. If they can solve those issues within Shadowbringers, I think Shadowbringers has the potential to be probably one of the best, you know, iterations of this game yet.
Did any of you get a chance to watch Larry Czar's interview yet?
I did. I remember him talking about Monk being the fact that with Monk they didn't want to put in Grease Lightning 4 with Heavensward because they were worried about the balance.
Mm-hmm.
But they decided that's why Monk is Yoshi P's favorite job in Shadowbringers. Well, one of them to work on, because it helped them break out of their shell of, rather than thinking of future expansions, to think of the now and have the players, think about what the players will enjoy now rather than what they'll enjoy in 4 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we've got Grease Lightning 4. Yes, thank you, Yoshi.
It was just super interesting to see them balance. It was super interesting to see him ask a question and it pivot into, like, let's talk about the balance between the fact that we plan out content for what we've told you, and then content that is not only stuff we haven't told you, but is so far out that most people are not even thinking about it. So they really do say, okay, we've got to give you something to chew on today, but we've got to plan, you know, I can't just worry about what I'm serving for lunch at the grocery store. I have to think about, like, well, what are we doing for dinner? What are we doing this weekend? What are we, right? Mm-hmm. And so they've got to plan out this content cycle that's just got some serious depth to it.
I think we have time for one more comment, just FYI.
Hungry with all of these food analogies.
I know, making me hungry.
We've
already talked about Texas barbecue, buffets.
Can you guys tell I didn't have breakfast? So I'm going to read off two comments that I think are interesting, and you guys can engage with either one, because I feel that they're kind of talking about two different directions here. So Jonathan Regulio says, I've been very disappointed by most of the changes I've heard up till now. Too many nerfs and simplification. Lots of tactical combat choices are just gone. But Drew Wilson says, I wonder why they don't just expand the trust system to ARR and Heavensward so new players and returning players can play through ARR, Heavensward, and maybe even Stormblood, and possibly boss fights, let's just say old content, which would allow them to learn the game, learn the mechanics, classes, etc. It would keep content alive and accessible, not force veterans to play content they are burned out on. So these two comments in my mind, one of them saying we're making the game too easy, too accessible, too simple, and that's a problem. And the other one is saying they should really do a better job of kind of catching people up, which kind of sounds like it's asking for at least a taste of that casualization. Anybody else thoughts on casualization? We'll start with Chille.
About the trust system, I want to jump on that part. Yes, it would be nice for them to be able to feature the trust in content that's not Shadowbringers, but at the same time, each trust will be individually programmed for the AI routine of those bosses, those fights. It would take too much effort for them to go back, because I'm guessing that it's not completely, RNG. It's probably the whole trust system is pretty much scripted because of the fact that, you got this pull, this pull, this pull, this pull.
Yes.
So for them to have to go back and do every single dungeon that they've done and have it all scripted, it would be too much of a time sink, I feel like, or at least for launch. Maybe we'll see more in the future, but I doubt it, because those dungeons weren't designed for that sort of content.
Not only that, but it's actually the core ARR programming. So it's that, like, 14 is going to at some point either need its cataclysm, or it's going to be like, hey guys, and now there's 17 or so, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I just feel like it wasn't designed for it, so therefore they can't include it. But at the same time, yeah, I can understand that. By the way, about the casualization, we don't know yet. We haven't played it. You've played it a little bit, but you've not played it. I don't think it's gone casual at all. I think that essentially when people are focusing purely on the jobs themselves and this rotate. It's like there's other sides of the coin. Like the difficulty isn't just about like pressing 1,000 buttons. It's about dodging mechanics. It's about being situationally aware. It's about making sure you understand like stats and priorities. The fights themselves, and essentially, if the rotations may be getting just a little bit easier, on some, that's not counting global cooldowns. That's not counting the utility mechanics that the part like is shifting in that direction. I think the fights themselves can essentially make up the gap, and it could end up being essentially that skill gap. There's still skill to be played. This isn't a one button. Like if it was literally like press A and win, then yeah, I would definitely agree with people. I think people are focusing on just one core aspect because that's what they have the information on, because they don't know the new Eden raid. They don't know, these are the things we don't know, so we're going to focus in on what we can see and what we can speculate. And I think it's a lot of wasted energy when it's affecting you negatively. If you're looking at it and you're like, man, I can't wait to learn this, can't wait to, I see this, I don't understand it, I can't wait to go hands-on, then that's a really good use of the time. But
I see my new abilities. I'm like, okay, how can I fit these into what I'm doing right now? Or how am I going to have to change what I'm doing now? What am I going to have to do this and this and this?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
If you're using it to prep and then to experiment on day one, then you're using it your time right. Meoni.
I think that people are confusing casualization with some of the jobs, at least the ones I've had the time to really go through, because I'm obviously behind on a lot of the information. But I think that people are confusing that with what they actually wanted and the feedback that they, designed those jobs in Shadowbringers to feel like. I mean, a great example of this would be tanks and tank mastery. A lot of people have said, oh, that's dumbing down the tanks. Why would you do this? When in reality, it's not at all. In many ways, they're giving people what they wanted, a focus on a further DPS rotation to pull big numbers, and tanking wasn't, it doesn't change anything.
It wasn't hard in the first place.
You turn off or on, but now you get to use the abilities you want to use anyway as a warrior, regardless of if you're tanking or not, and you can pull those big numbers. And I would even defend it further by saying that the new abilities, especially with Dark Knight, they've made it a lot more tactical, I would say. There's timing to everything. Yeah, you can just press 4 buttons and go and be half decent, but that's not going to remotely make you any good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has a timing. Like, look at Ninja. My goodness.
Yeah, Ninja looks crazy.
It does. It looks like playing a keyboard whilst rubbing your head and tiptoeing on stilts. It's fantastic, and I love that. So I think people really need to play it before they can go, this is terrible. Why would you do this to my class? But just play it, and that's the problem.
I think there's one aspect of it is that when you look at how the jobs relate to one another, is that you can have jobs that do different things. We got 4 tanks, and I felt like Gunbreaker has a ton of abilities, but then I felt Dark Knight was definitely a little bit more simplified on its skills, in that it's like you can have varying technical differences between the jobs, and I personally like that. I don't want there to be a Dark Knight and then a Black Knight and then a darker midnight blue knight. It's like where it's it's literally the same thing. Our timer has dinged. So it's like that kind of feels what it is. Toss to Chris to kind of share some of his thoughts on these comments.
So, having played through it a little, I was disappointed that I didn't have to worry about threat at all. So I'm hoping that's because I think part of tanking is balancing threat into kind of. So I like enmity rotations because I think that's one task. So if they've replaced that with stunning, if they've replaced that with using your defensive cooldowns to keep your party members alive better, if they've replaced it with something, that's fine. But in the level 73 dungeon, it felt like now I'm just doing the DPS rotation. If I just want to do a melee DPS rotation, I could go be a melee. And people are like, but now you're standing in front of the boss. Like, well, plenty of melees are standing in front of the boss anyway. They're not supposed to be, but they are. So I could already have been doing that. So I really worry about the identity of melee versus tanking as a concept, other than the fact that you're the guy pulling. But once again, there's plenty of melees that pull. So I don't know that it's really enough of a difference for me. But I want to hold final judgment because, like you said, we haven't seen the content. How does that work in raids? How does that work in trials? Because that's where tanking, in my opinion, really matters. 4-man content in this game has always been fairly casual. So to say you're going to casualize it, it's like, well, it's hard to casualize something that was already so unbelievably easy to clear on day one and only gets easier with gear. So unless they're going to add hard modes to dungeons, I'm not super worried about it. The other classes didn't feel like they got casual at all. For having less buttons on my bar, my Gunbreaker had a lot of buttons. For having what felt like less things to do, it still felt really active. So I'm not super worried about them simplifying. Most jobs are going to feel really, really good. I do think that some people's jobs changed enough. Like if you were a machinist, or if you were a bard, or if you were a summoner, it may have changed so much that you need to find a different job that fit to you better. But it's not because they ruined those jobs. It's just because they changed. And then as far as the trust system, I do think that they're trying to find ways to catch people up. And it's hard because we keep hearing it. So to the new players, they're like, why aren't you guys patient with them? It's not that bad. And it's like, yes, but we've been asking for them to make the path for new players to get any current content easier. At every fan fest, at every Q&A, at every media tour, we've been asking and asking and asking. And every time they seem to think it's no more significant than Eggy glamours based on their actions. And that's where the frustration comes from. It's that I have friends that I want to play and they're coming over from WoW and they're making it through like the level 40 MSQ, and they're like, yeah, I'm done. You're telling me I gotta do twice this amount? No way. And so I want those people to be able to get into the game, and if trusts or veteran something or a free jump potion to level 50 would do it, then just help me get players into the game.
It's also the slog from 2.1 to 2.5. There's so much filler quest during that part that a lot of my friends, when they've gone, I've literally said, look, you get to 2.0, that's not too bad. Once you get to 2.0, I'm paying for your boost. And I've bought a few in the past where I've just, I don't mind. I'll tell you what happened. Nothing.
Yeah, it would be interesting if they sold like, I don't know, skip potion with like a certain, like if you buy the ARR through Shadowbringers edition, you get up to level 50 as an optional skip potion. So it would be nice to see something like that. So I know these were like two different comments, but I really felt they were kind of talking about two opposing issues. One is that the game is not casual enough. It's not approachable enough for new players. And I do agree with that. And I see where that frustration comes with. And the other side of that is that now the game is becoming too easy and too approachable. And that one I think I disagree with. I mean, we made a whole video talking about how we think that tanks are not, they're losing part of what makes tanks, and they haven't shown us what they're replacing that with us yet. But I don't think that means all jobs are ruined. Like the comment says, most changes, too many nerfs, too many simplifications. It's really just that the enmity rotation's gone, and enmity was already something so easy to manage. So I don't really understand why it had to be removed. Like it was such a small part of the job that taking it out just takes away variety. It doesn't really, I mean, most of the time you're just doing your DPS rotation anyway. So
Oh.
I guess that's why they just knew that people were just doing the DPS rotation. So why have the buttons fill in the bar?
Yeah, as a controller player, it's actually really way more comfortable, because it's like I would do that once, and then it's like, all right, could it just shift? Could could the UI become smarter? Chille, I know you got to run, so do you have any final thoughts before we toss to Meoni, and then we'll wrap up this episode?
About the dungeon stuff, I felt like from watching some of the dungeon gameplay that there is a lot more mechanics in this dungeon than most dungeons.
Yep.
Such as the second boss where you have to run and pick up the tethers, otherwise it gets a damage increase, I think. And then the final boss where I know I'm going to fall off several times, where it makes the little platform.
Mm-hmm. That was cool.
One of the staff was standing behind me on the second boss, and I had him down to like 10% maybe, and he leaned into my ear. And he said, so today's the last day of the media tours, and I just want you to know that not a single person has cleared this boss first try.
Yeah.
And I died. I was like, why would you say that? Like, why would you do that? So.
But yeah,
go ahead, Chille.
I've enjoyed everything that I've looked at. I know I'm not a healer, so I can't complain about what the problems with that. And yes, I tank occasionally, but my main is DPS. And as a controller player on PS4, I've enjoyed the changes and the removal of bloat. I can't wait to see how it's going to play. Until I've played it, I can't complain too much. Mm-hmm. I enjoy what I look of. If the raids are going to be then we've got 5.1 to patch it out and change some things. or 5.2 or 5. We've got future patches. It's going to be tweaked, and it's it's still going to be tweaked before it gets released anyway. So we'll see.
It'll be tweaked. It'll be tweaked, and they always provide feedback respectfully. I mean, you don't have to be happy about it, but you don't have to be like a jerk about it. Meoni, what are your thoughts?
I think my final thoughts of what I saw from the media tour, from what footage I've seen people put out, I think that it looks very promising. I'm basically pausing every single video at the moment that I see, trying to read lore on fates and things here and there, trying to piece it together, because that's the bit that's most interesting to me, is the storyline, and it looks insane from what we like. The backdrops, I want to know what it's like, why Ilmeg is what it looks like. I know it's on the edge of the flood of light supposedly, etc., but that's the bit
masked
that's
a lot.
exciting.
They masked a lot. A lot of the NPC names were just like all caps, where it just said like shop or like, so they hid all sorts of things from us. And they said that the voiceovers and the stuff on the trusts, that there was going to be a lot more of that, but they had to strip a lot of those out of the dungeons that we ran because they were revealing lore. And so there should be a lot more voiceover. There should be a lot more stuff down in the dialogue box. The trusts, that they intentionally dialed that back because they didn't want any spoilers.
I can't remember whose video this was on, but didn't they also say that, I think it was Mr. Happy's or was it Larry's, that the trust system will also have unique dialogue based on who you bring in?
Yeah,
so,
no, they can interact with each other.
It's yours. Okay.
Yeah, so the interactions. So if you have Minophilia and Alpha Node, like they may have things that they only say in the presence of each other. And so actually, one of our interview questions was it was from Reddit, was because we shared our interview slot with Reddit. Olivine Peridot, I think was her name. And so you say that like, how are you determining who to add? And they said, we're only going to add people from the story. So you most likely will never see somebody from like a crossover event, anything like that. And that they're going to have to add them very slowly because, like you said, they're all very scripted for the content they can run, but they also they want to plan out unique interactions. Like, they may only say that comment to each other in the presence of each other in a certain dungeon, because they also want to have that character commenting on the dungeon that they're in, to help explore lore even more if that character has a unique relationship with the location you're in.
Yeah, it's really quite awesome what they're trying to make it. And it's also they're not anywhere near as efficient as other humans. I know a lot of people have said like, oh, why, like, this is just becoming a single player game. And it's like, it always has been, and it has multiplayer. It's a single player game set in an MMO that sometimes brings you together with other people. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a knock on the game. And having trust isn't essentially, breaking it out any which way. It gives you an option as a player for what you have time for. If the wait for the dungeon is 50 minutes and it's going to take you 30 minutes to run with the trusts, or you can clear it in 15. Like, hopefully what this ends up doing for people who want to have that content is it ends up making them use Party Finder, or start to actually make relationships with people, because the fastest queue time anybody will ever have is running with a pre-made. No, wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a point, but I don't remember what it was.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap. So I know Chille needs to get out of here. Yep. We can definitely come back. There's lots of comments, lots of things to be having. Meoni and Chille, thank you guys for making the time today to kind of sit down with us and talk about it. Hey, no problem. But for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
My name is Chille.
We did it, guys. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and take care.
Beverage of choice.
Beverage of choice.
I don't drink energy drinks that often. I have a sick
Just
dog
got
right
water in them.
up.
But when I do,
I prefer Monster.
I can't do Monster. Like, it makes me like, I'm gonna run a marathon. I just get too hyped. It's
gives me headaches.
Yeah.
Relentless is for me if I get energy drinks.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored. All right. What's going on, Workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
Chille here.
Meoni here.
All right. We've got everybody here to do a special episode of Community Feedback governing. It's like, what the hell? Yeah. Like, I have a timer and I'm blowing it. All right.